So after Knights, what do we have next here? We have probably the most notorious class in the game. From old Rose to new Rose. The Rose Online most newbie-friendly class tier list. And there's going to be a couple criteria for this one. It's going to be... One of them is going to be ease of leveling. Some survivability in the mix as well. And a little bit of scaling. And that's going to be our basis for this. To start off, we have the first image here, which is the Borg, or the, if you want to be proper with it, the Bourgeois, which is the more offensive class of the dealer tree. So Borg, we would put it somewhere in, seeing as they are the best farming classes in the game. You would think that I would put it in the S tier, but I will actually put it down more towards the A tier, I believe. Only because it does level quite fast and easily in the early to mid. The problem with the end game is that like you have to kite a lot. So if you're a complete newbie, let's say like you're completely new to MMOs even, you know, if you get to end game and you're, you know, expecting to maybe like just roll like a bunch of mobs or something like that because you're quote unquote labeled as like the best farmer in the game, you'll be a little disappointed. But like as long as you can, you know, as long as you can kite, it is the best farming class in the game. The only thing is like you can't face roll with it, so you can't, you know, it's not, if it's not like a face roll class, tends to be not the most newbie friendly. So it is good, but it's not the most newbie friendly class. So next up is the Artisan. Artisan, I would probably put Artisan in like the B tier. The reason why I put Artisan in B tier is because number one, it is the crafting class. Number two, it doesn't have as much AoE as like a Borg. You know, so in parties it's not as wanted as a Borg. The only thing is like it is ranged and it does a lot of damage. It has a really high crit rate. So it makes the early, mid, and even the late leveling easier still. The good thing about like if you follow the leveling guide, the good thing about like being a dealer class is that when you're farming Yeti riders mostly drop dealer gear. So it's really easy to get a full set of demon gear and making your whole leveling process like so much easier, because chances are you can solo or group and just kill mobs before they can even get to you. The next one's champion. Where do we put champion? I would say in the list of most newbie friendly class, I would put champions on the S tier. Only because number one, it's a very forgiving class. It has a lot of AoEs and is wanted in like every group, from early to mid to late game to end game, all that. It's actually like a very needed class, and you know it's very forgiving as well because it's very tanky. And the like the spear spec, you know, for PvE is actually very forgiving. It's like you're tanky, and somehow you also have like almost enough dodge to match the dodge of like a raider, which is crazy to me. So it's definitely S tier. I'm definitely gonna put that in S tier. That's like no debate. Champions S tier, absolutely. Next one is Clerics. Now this is like for old school Rose players, Cleric, this might be a bit of a surprise, because like before Clerics were just pretty much like buff bots. But I'm actually gonna put Cleric in surprisingly S tier. Now, bear with me here. The reason why I want to put Clerics in S tier is because you have the option to be support, which means like you're always wanted in a party, and in the event that you're not wanted in a party, because of the current rows where buffs have been redistributed to other classes, battle clerics got buffed, then they got real buffed. So that makes Cleric leveling from early to mid really easy, because if you can't find a party, you can always go your battle spec. You know, resets are unlimited. In the end game as well, when it comes to hunting like king mobs, when it comes to like leveling solo, all you have to put down as a newbie is you put down your totems. You get like pretty much like infinite sustain, and you can just stand in that spot and start ranging mobs from afar. So that's, you know, very good survivability, very good adaptability. I kind of have to put it in S tier. It doesn't, like, you can say like, yes, it doesn't have the same AoEs or tankiness as like champion, but it does have more sustain. The fact that you can sit there and the battle cleric can sit there in endgame mobs like pterosaur and just start ranging them and hitting for like, you know, 1.5 to 2k plus depending on your gear, and just not die, I feel is very, 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 very newbie friendly. Now the next class we have on the list here is the knight. Now I think everybody can agree with me that when it comes to knight, this ridiculously face roll of a class is automatically going to be an S tier. We don't even have to think about this one. Knights are, you know, I've known some people who made you know, a board class to farm, and they made a knight alt to farm or to level, and they've actually went from farming on their Borg, even though, like, you know, it is the best farming class in the game, to their knights, only because it was much easier and it was much more face roll, and they could multitask more without dying. So yeah, knights are definitely on the S tier. So after knights, what do we have next here? We have probably the most notorious class in the game, from old Rose to new Rose, which is the Mage. In all honesty, if I had put a you know, a triple S tier in this list, it would have to be Mage. And for the sake of optics, I'm just gonna put it here. I'm gonna put it before champ here. So let's put it like that right there, right? Like, this is the number 1 in the S tier, number 2, number 3, number 4. And Mage is, some people might debate like, oh, but it's not as newbie friendly, there's so many skills. I'm like, that's a whole lot of copium. Because I have introduced people who are completely new to the game, never played Rose Online before, never even heard of it before. And guess what? They managed to level smoother than anybody. Smoother than anybody. All from early to mid to late game, and now they're destroying mobs in dungeons. So people who are trying to guise mage classes as like this complicated class, like, it does have a high skill ceiling, I'll tell you that, but the floor is not that high either. It's completely broken. I don't want it to get nerfed though. I don't want it to get nerfed. I would much rather have other classes that are lower tiered to be buffed instead. Next, we move on to the next class. This would be the Raider. And I think everybody can agree with me, like, with the current state of Raiders, I think we're pretty much at like C tier. Actually, I would go as far as putting us in D tier. I would never recommend a Raider to a newbie. Never. Only because it's like, number 1, your early game is just not good. Your mid game is just not good. Your late game, you think you'd be scaled up by then, but your late game is also not good. Because in order for you to be in a quote unquote like good spot as a raider, you'd have to be really invested into it. And the thing about raider is, like, even when you're fully invested into it and you're really geared, it's still really hard to justify it to a newbie. Because, like, number one is, like, raider, if you play raider, especially if you play like Qatar raider, you probably have like the class fantasy of, like, you know, like, let's say like maybe you played like, you know, Guillotine Cross or Assassin Cross in Ragnarok Online, and you really like the fast attack speed. But the difference is with like Rose Online and let's say like Ragnarok Online was that, like, if you were like an attack speed class, you did incredible single target damage. Incredible single target damage. Qatar Raider does good single target damage, but it's not incredible single target damage. Like, you have to realize you have no AoE as a Qatar Raider, and the AoEs that you have are complete garbage. The only reason that I would put it maybe up here in C tier is because of dual sword build raiders. That's the only way. But we're gonna do that in another tier list for like weapons tier list at one point in time. So for now, I'm gonna have to put it down here, only because Qatar Raider needs a lot of love. You know, dual sword raider, it's still meta. If you want a PvP as a Qatar Raider, you're gonna have to use like a burn build with, like, you know, high charisma or something like that. You know, but like, if you're gonna do that, then why not just play dual sword? Matter of fact, if you're gonna go for, like, you know, the elemental like burn type of like attacks, why not just go mage? Just go mage. Like, save yourself the grief. Save yourself like the lower level, the mid level, and the high level like grinding. Just go mage. So the last on the list for the most newbie friendly classes is the scout. Scout, I would put Scout in, say, like probably the A tier along with Borg. They may not have the same farming and AoE potential that like Borg has, but they do have more survivability. They do have really good single target, you know, damage. They do have faster animations besides like the charge skill that takes a little bit. And they do really good damage early, mid, and into the late game. And their range is definitely a plus when you're trying to pull certain bosses or certain mobs from like a huge group of mobs. For example, like in Halls of Oblivion, right? So they're relevant, and with like, you know, with Arrow Rain and like Poison Arrow Rain, they actually have some decent AoE. So I would put them in A tier for sure.